I apologize, interstate got me, I did not see that happening. I even left early and, it stopped for quite a while there. So, anyway, as a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. The order of events tonight will be as follows. Each public hearing staff will be introduced an agenda item, present a summary of the staff report. The applicant will be then asked to explain their proposal in further detail and to answer any questions from the planning commission members. I will then open the floor to public comment, first to persons in support of the application, and then for persons in opposition to the application. When you step up to the podium, please state your name, address, and speak in the microphone. Speakers are encouraged to address new and relevant information pertaining to them. Above all, please be cordial and to all meeting participants, and do not speak out of turn or you'll be asked to leave. Lastly, decisions and conditional use permits, that's not going to apply. All right. So, first of all, let's do roll call.
Monty DeRusso.
Yep. Monty, I'll run through them.
You're gonna call the roll? Okay.
All right. Commissioner Hogan.
Here.
Commissioner Dustro.
Here.
Commissioner Poppins.
Here by phone.
And Commissioner Jungling is here. City of Sioux Falls.
Good evening, Commissioners. We'll call the roll on our side as well. Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Norman.
Here.
Commissioner Irvin.
Yes.
Commissioner Paulson.
Yes.
And I'll be the chair tonight. Eric Nyberg, we have a quorum on the city side.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll do approval of minutes. I believe everyone's seen and received the last meeting's minutes. Any discussion? Any changes? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion and second to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes. This is Hogan.
If there's, I can second the motion. I was not at the meeting, but I did read through them. If there's no updates or anything, I will second the motion.
All right, we have a motion and second. Any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none, I will ask for a roll call. Commissioner Hogan.
Yes.
Commissioner Jusso.
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins.
Aye.
And Commissioner Jungling is yes. City of Sioux Falls.
Commissioners, the minutes have been approved on the county side. Can I get a motion for the city side?
Move for approval, Irvin. Second, Paulson.
We have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Commissioner Norman.
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin.
Yes.
Commissioner Paulson.
Yes.
The minutes have been approved on the city side.
Thank you very much. We'll now move for the agenda. Mr. Brown, any changes to the agenda?
No changes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. I'll ask for a motion.
So move to approve. DeRusso.
I'll second Hogan.
All right, we have a motion second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll go to roll call. Commissioner Hogan.
Yes.
Commissioner Drusso.
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins.
Yes.
Commissioner Jungling is also a yes. City of Sioux Falls.
Commissioners, the agenda has been approved on the county side. Could I get a motion to approve of the agenda on the city side?
Mr. Chair, move to approve the agenda. Second, Orman.
Very good. We have a motion and a second. We'll take a roll call vote on that. Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Norman,
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin,
Yes.
Commissioner Paulson.
Yes.
The agenda has been approved on the city side.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll do public input on non-agenda items. So anything that's not on the agenda tonight, any public would like to speak on it, please step forward and state your name. Seeing none, we'll move on to unfinished business. Any unfinished business, Mr. Brown?
None, Mr. Chairman.
All right, City of Sioux Falls, do you have any unfinished business?
Any unfinished business tonight, Commissioners? None.
All right, thank you. Consider a new business. Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Toby Brown, representing County Planning.
So the first item on the agenda, and the only item on the agenda this evening, is a proposed ordinance amending the joint zoning regulations for Lincoln County and the city of Sioux Falls. Specifically, this ordinance would amend Article 9, the C Commercial District, and Article 24, the definition section. As you are aware, South Dakota Codified Law, Chapter 3420G became effective on July 1st. And so as part of that state statute, each of the entities individually has gone through and amended or in the process of amending their zoning regulations. This particular amendment would address the joint jurisdictional area between the city of Sioux Falls and Lincoln County. Lincoln County was and the unincorporated area was one of the first entities to actually adopt regulations. And the regulations that we adopted in the unincorporated area incorporated the use of all 4 uses that are allowed under state statute. I realize that the city of Sioux Falls is going through an ordinance amendment currently where they're just looking at dispensaries and testing facilities. So there is a difference between the 2 entities. This proposed ordinance would amend the commercial district of the joint ordinance and would allow medical cannabis establishments, and that would be all 4 uses to be amended into subsection J of the commercial district. Subsection J is a permissive use, so a by right use. It's not a permitted use, special use, and it's not a conditional use. This would make medical cannabis establishments a permissive use or a by right use. And so I'll just quickly go through the components of it. So the first component of it would be a setback from a single-family dwelling with 1,000 feet. That setback would be measured from the establishment to the property line of the residence. It wouldn't go directly to the structure of the residence. It goes to the property line. The next item, number 2, this is codified statute under state statute that it has to be 1,000 feet from a public or a private school. Item number 3 must be located 1,000 feet from a church. And again, that's measured from the medical cannabis establishment to the property line of the church. And then number 4 would be 1,000 feet from a public service facility. Public service facility is a defined use within the zoning ordinance and as defined. Typically, it's a governmental type facility, operational facility. And then item number 5 would be 1,000 feet from a park. And item number 6 will be 1,000 feet from another medical cannabis establishment. And then number 7 specifically calls out that we would allow what they call vertical integration of the different uses. So within one property, they could utilize all 4 of those uses on the property. And then we're amending the definitions section of the zoning ordinance. And these definitions incorporate or codify what is in state statute for those different types of uses. So we didn't create any additional definitions or anything like that. So this is the proposal, what would amend it. As you can see, I've been mentioning that this amendment would amend Article 9 of the commercial district. Article 10 is the I-1 light industrial district. The I-1 light industrial district does allow permissive uses that are allowed in the commercial district. So this also will allow these type of standards regulate, or these types of uses as a permissive use in the I-1 light industrial district as well, okay? And so another thing that staff has done is we've developed some maps, and I realize these are really small. I'll have to zoom in on these a little bit. So this is the joint jurisdictional area that is governed by our regulations. And this is the current properties that are zoned commercial and industrial within the joint jurisdictional area. And I'll answer, because everyone always asks me, is what are these here? Are these islands? Those are islands that haven't been annexed into the city yet. So they are still under the jurisdiction of Lincoln County through this ordinance. But these are existing properties that are zoned commercial and light industrial in the joint jurisdictional area. Okay. And so this map was prepared to show what the impact of the proposed regulation would be as far as available locations. And the yellow would be and I'll just sit back here once. So the yellow would be kind of the buffer area of where we have residential zone properties right now. The school, same thing, we buffered off of the school and the church. There is no particular school or church that's outside of the city, however. Those are all within the city, but we did buffer them off of the city. And those would be the Harrisburg School District, and then I don't recall the church that's in this area here. And then we also did do, this would be, this map shows if you drop the 1,000-foot setback to 500 feet for a residential setback, this shows what that area would be. Okay. And so with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have for staff at this time.
I have a question. Because that's gonna get into Harrisburg, knowing that I'm on the Harrisburg Park, or Planning and Zoning. And we have decided that that's not something that we wanted. Will this override Harrisburg?
So Harrisburg only has zoning jurisdiction within their corporate limits.
Right,
And so there won't be any overlap or conflict in it, no.
okay,
Harrisburg would be more impacted by the unincorporated ordinance that we had adopted in the regular ordinance, in our
Okay.
county zoning ordinance.
So is that, Toby, that means everything that city Harrisburg is annexed in is not included in this, correct?
That's their jurisdiction, would be everything that's
Okay.
annexed into the city, yes, yep.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Toby, would you explain how, where you started as a joint task force, City of Sioux Falls, Lincoln County, and Minnehaha County, and came up with 3 different establishment arrangements, and you added vertical integration. Could you explain that and what the basis of the full 4 establishments and integration are in your ordinance?
Well, I think staff's been working on this a long time. You know, the first time that I started working with the City of Sioux Falls staff was probably last October, was when we originally started working on just going through processes and things like that. I participated in the IM26 task force, which you're referencing. I wasn't part of the first meeting, I was more of the second, third meetings. But we did, in addition to that, city staff, myself, and Minnehaha County staff met periodically to go over drafts. I prepared drafts. The Minnehaha County version is somewhat what I originally prepared to go through the process. But you're correct, there's 3 different versions of the drafts. This draft that I've prepared is a balance of what our county and the unincorporated area has adopted. So that was kind of the basis for it too, because in conjunction with this, the Lincoln County Board of Commissioners adopted a licensing ordinance. And that licensing ordinance covers the unincorporated area, but it also covers this area as well. It covers all unincorporated areas of the county. And so with their ordinance, with their licensure ordinance, and with our unincorporated zoning ordinance amendment, it calls for all 4 uses to be allowed within the unincorporated area. And so I incorporated that into this, but this is a joint ordinance. And we both have to agree that this is the correct ordinance for what it is. And so at this stage, staff is just presenting this as the current draft, and we hope that there's dialogue, discussion, as well as public comment to what the best approach is. But hopefully I answered kind of the question there. I think that city staff and county staff from Minnehaha County and myself, we realized that we weren't going to have the same similar ordinances, but we all work towards just, we know that we need some type of regulation, but the best approach is to get this forward to you as the planning commission, the public, and the elected officials ultimately to kind of go forward with it. So I think this is the best staff approach to what the county has in the unincorporated area and what we would like to see kind of move forward in the joint area. But in saying that, we have to come to an agreement on the city side as well. So.
Well, what I was wondering about is, obviously, each one of those entities received input from the staff. I would assume law enforcement, fire safety officials. What I don't understand is how that came out so differently.
I guess the best answer to give is there are three different entities, you know, and from day one, our board was committed, our board of county commissioners, our elected officials were committed to having all four uses.
When they started?
Yes, from almost the start, yes. That was the direction they gave to staff, yes.
Thank you.
All right, commissioners, any other discussion with staff? Any other questions? Lincoln County?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Poppins.
trying to meld a lot of different ideas on something that is new to our state is not an easy task. We understand that, but what I'm trying to understand is we go through a lot of diligence to create zones. We have retail zones, industrial zones, commercial zones, and now yet we're creating a separate requirement that is based on setbacks from homes and things like that. I guess I have not heard a reason that really clarifies to me why we need to have additional setbacks beyond what our zoning has created to protect residential and or those type of structures. I was hoping someone could enlighten me with that if they had an explanation.
Was it my recognition, no, I can't even speak tonight, that, wasn't there something with, not the dispensaries, but is it the cultivation of it, where we needed to make sure the fire department was on board because there's a possibility of explosions? Wasn't that a part of something? Do you remember that, Jerry? When they came up and
Yeah.
presented to us?
I do remember that, and I think we probably get some answers when we come forward with the gentleman in the audience. But
Right.
I do remember a conversation about that, yes.
Yes. So that's concerning to me, that it would be around not only other businesses, but possibly homes.
So I can better answer that question, Mr. Paulson's questions, but the 1,000 feet is a sensitive land use in the city of Sioux Falls. And so the only difference really between the three ordinances is what I'm gonna say is the four uses and the one or the two uses. Minnehaha County is just doing dispensaries. Sioux Falls is proposing in their area dispensaries and testing facilities. We're proposing all four. But the setbacks as proposed by all three entities were essentially the same because of the sensitive land uses in the city of Sioux Falls.
But also Lincoln County is going to allow in the cultivation of it, which is the part where the explosions can happen.
The production processing of it.
Right.
Yes, yeah,
And Minnehaha County and Sioux Falls is not.
correct,
Okay.
correct.
So this,
And as-
excuse me, Mr. Chairman, clarification.
Yes, Commissioner Poppins.
From someone from the city of Sioux Falls, you're not allowing cultivation at all within the municipality?
Jason Bieber with Planning and Development Services with the City of Sioux Falls. You are correct. We only are allowing within our City of Sioux Falls zoning ordinance testing facilities and dispensaries, not manufacturing or cultivation.
And I think, just to ask, I couldn't quite understand his first statement, but as far as the zoning goes with the retail side of it in the commercial district, as I understood, that's kind of what he was looking at, because we have different written on the retail side than the commercial side. Is that not correct? I think that's what Commissioner Poppins was looking at, was more the retail side with the commercial property or the industrial property, and allowing that use as a retail site.
I think, and I'll jump in, Commissioner Poppins, but I think he's questioning the setback from a dwelling. And with the idea that we have a commercial district, we're supposed to concentrate commercial uses within that district. You know, do you need a setback from residents within that district? And but I'll defer to him to answer that question.
You're correct. I mean, we try to create our buffer zones by our different zoning, and if we place it in a zoning that by our clear definition is supposed to have that buffer already, does that not answer that?
So, just for arguments, and not even arguments, but for conversation's sake here, discussion, questioning then, the commissioners, our commissioners were set on all 4 of these being able to be set in our county, when the other ones around us were only set with the 2? And you all got the same information, so I'm confused on how that is. I'm confused as a city of Sioux Falls, how you all got the same information, but our county commissioners have decided to go ahead with all 4, and the other ones are just the 2. Especially, I'm just totally hung up on this, the danger of this part of it.
So I guess there's kind of a question for the city of Sioux Falls, then would Mr. Beaver or the Sioux Falls commissioners wish to answer?
Or Lincoln County, I mean, Commissioner Poppins, I mean, that was my question to Commissioner Poppins. If you all have the same information, Lincoln County, Minnehaha County, and Sioux Falls and Minnehaha County decide, nope, we're only gonna allow these 2, but then Lincoln County instructed staff to move forward with all 4 with the same information. I'm confused as how did that happen with all the same information?
I think Toby, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but I think Toby did a pretty good job of kind of explaining that a little bit. You know, when we set forth with this task force, we had representatives from Lincoln County, Minnehaha County, and the city of Sioux Falls. And really, it's 3 different bodies, 3 different political bodies. And really, everybody then in the end kind of came up with rules that they felt were best for their areas. Now, as Toby said, the separation distances and the types of zoning districts to allow them, that was pretty much even across the board. Really, the big difference, as he indicated, was allowing all 4 down in Lincoln County. I believe for the joint jurisdiction area, Sioux Falls would have liked to keep it similar to ours. However, then we run into that issue with having 2 licensing ordinances, because even though we have joint jurisdiction for zoning, Lincoln County has the licensing aspect of it. And so that's where we kind of tried to maybe mirror our zoning ordinances to what you guys or what the county commission had done for licensing. So I think that's a little bit of the change.
That's standard, okay.
But
We
a
have
lot
the
of-
licensing.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff in here, like Toby said, we all sat down together and presented some draft ordinances to the IM task force, and a lot of them are pretty similar besides really the additional uses. And I think that's just different bodies wanting what they feel is right for their county, their city, their municipality, so.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Beaver. Or Commissioner Poppins or anyone else have any more questions for staff?
City Commissioner.
What I can say is,
Sorry.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Poppins.
sorry for the delay. I mean, the reason why you can have different answers, you have a board all the time, and there's never it's not like a uniform, consistent that everyone votes the same every way. So our county has looked at this by testimony differently as of to this point. If there's additional clarification as to the danger that may or may not exist, opinions can change as well. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Any questions at this time, commissioners? Seeing none on the city side.
Okay.
It's a public hearing, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Brown.
It's a public hearing, so if you want to open for public
Okay,
comment.
yep, just making sure all commissioners are good with questions for staff at this time. All right, with that, we will open up to a public comment.
Good evening, Emmett Reistroffer. I reside at 915 South 4th Avenue in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. It's great to be here tonight, and I appreciate the efforts by staff and members of the task force. I'm here in support of the ordinance. I think this is, pretty much everything I was going to say has already been said as to how we got to this point. I've had a terrific experience collaborating with elected officials and members of Lincoln County, and we have had such great dialogue to be able to learn about these types of facilities and what goes into them. So I'm going to try to answer a couple questions that came up and just a couple points. So I'll be pretty quick. But regarding the danger that can be associated with the extraction of cannabinoids from the cannabis plant, there's roughly 2,500 to 3,000 facilities around the country. And in the past 10 years, one has had an explosion, and it was found that they were actually not in compliance with the fire code or the requirements. And that was in a small town in California. So what that means is for 10 years, thousands of facilities have cultivated and extracted cannabis with nearly a flawless track record. It's a tragedy if any accident happens, no matter what industry you're in. It can happen on farms. I've heard of people who die while farming. So there are risks in all occupations, but the National Fire Prevention Association has created a very robust code around how you design facilities to remove the risk of explosion. It really is a 0% risk if you follow that code and if you have a good relationship with the fire departments, and that's something I've spent a lot of time in my career doing. So I hope we'll address that, and certainly I want to make sure that never happens. So we've been able to address that, I think, and I just wanted to show a couple maps real quick. Basically, there's really only one area in question in your jurisdiction, I think, tonight, and that's the area here. And
Excuse me,
Yep.
Ed.
oh, is there a? Yep.
Set it on the table.
There we go. Okay, great. So right over here, and I was unsure of the permissive process for the industrial zone. I'm not saying that right, but I was going to ask for that tonight, but that question was already answered for me, I guess. We do think this is a really good area to set up operations, and quite frankly, the direction of most elected officials statewide is not to allow cultivation, manufacturing, et cetera. We just haven't had the level of collaboration in the last 2 months that we've had here in Lincoln County. So this is really the one spot in the entire state that's going to be able to grow medicine for, probably 20 to 30,000 patients statewide. Otherwise, it'll be grown by tribal entities who have far less regulation. So it's really important to me that we move this forward because there's very few opportunities. Some of you had mentioned what's going on in Sioux Falls, so everyone's aware. I mean, there is nowhere for me to set up a wholesale operation other than what we're looking at right now, unless I have luck working with the city of T or even Canton perhaps, or somewhere else. We're having those conversations, but we worked awfully hard to educate and collaborate with the Lincoln County Commission, myself and Ned Horsted, who also emailed some comments. So I'm in support of this. I don't think there's much that needs to be changed. I would love it if we could open up even further. But so far I haven't had much luck getting those requests honored. So I just want to ask that we take what's offered here and really continue to accommodate what Lincoln County has supported. If anything, I'd ask that we just reduce that setback from single-family homes just slightly, because that would allow this entire industrial district to participate. Right now, I believe there's a single-family dwelling right here. I'm not sure who that is, but they've, evidently lived very close to a machinery operation, several industrial things. It just looks like a single-family dwelling. I really don't know what it is. There's another one right here. That would kind of take out a little bit of this too. So if we cut that down to 500 feet, that would really allow this entire area to participate in the industry.
That's kind of blurry, I'm sorry. Is that tall grass?
I think right here, no, tall grass is right here, I believe.
Oh, okay.
No,
It's upside down.
So there's 29, Interstate
Yep.
29, right?
so I guess I'll wrap up my comments, because basically, I just wanted to ask that we, keep in mind this area, the businesses will be licensed by Lincoln County. Lincoln County's already passed an ordinance. The land we're talking about is in Lincoln County. So although I know Sioux Falls has gone a different direction, I really hope we can recognize that what we're talking about tonight is Lincoln County. And that's really my only request tonight. But for those of you who don't know me, I'm very involved in the cannabis industry, so I'm happy to answer any questions about how facilities operate, how we engage our neighbors, how we mitigate risks that's been brought up, that sort of thing. I think everyone knows my position in Sioux Falls. I think it's too restrictive, but that's not a conversation here tonight. I just appreciate you listening to me again, and it'll be a work in progress, so I hope that we can prove to you in time that these operations are highly responsible and held to a very high standard. So ultimately, I don't think, that these restrictions, certainly in my experience at the task force, have not been requested by the community. In fact, I'm pretty much the only person that shows up and speaks out. Ned Horsted's another one. At that task force, I went to 2 of the meetings. I don't recall a single person from the public saying it needs to be as restrictive as possible. We've only heard the opposite, which is also what we heard at the Sioux Falls Planning Commission meeting last week. So I please ask you to just consider our input. We're really asking for a path forward to give 70% of voters what they've asked for, and we'll do whatever it takes to be good neighbors and good participants. So I really appreciate your time, and I'll answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, both sides, any questions? Thank you, that was very professional, thank you. All right, with anybody else from the public like to offer any input?
Mr. Chair, I did have email correspondence submitted.
Please, thank you.
Yep. So this is Ned Horsted, Executive Director of the Cannabis Industry Association of South Dakota, 27058 Southeastern Avenue, Sioux Falls, South Dakota 57108. Commissioners, unfortunately, I cannot be in attendance tonight, so I thank you for hearing me out via this statement. I've lived almost my entire life in Lincoln County and the Sioux Falls area and appreciate the hours of time and attention to detail that has been put into this joint zoning ordinance by city and county staff. Lincoln County has done a great job in fostering an environment that is open for business as it relates to this new industry. There are 2 changes that would greatly improve the ordinance. One, Section 6 could use a friendly amendment to ensure there is no confusion between Section 6, which requires 1,000 feet setback from other medical cannabis establishments, and Section 7, which clearly allows vertical integration. You could simply add owned by a different entity or entities to the end of the first sentence in Section 6. 2, the 1,000-foot requirement from a single-family dwelling is much too restrictive. Sioux Falls Ordinance Section 160.292B allows full-service restaurants 250 feet from single-family dwellings and on-sale alcohol establishments to be 500 feet from sensitive use. I believe that conditional use can be applied for in cases where businesses want to open but do not fit in these setbacks, but I'm not certain. Cannabis use is not allowed at any medical cannabis establishment, so if alcohol is to be used as a reference, this ordinance would better fit if aligned with ordinances governing off-sale alcohol establishments where people cannot consume on-site. As far as I can tell, the only setback Sioux Falls has for off-sale liquor appears to be 500 feet from schools. In a county that has approved IM26 by 72% of voters, these setbacks should be less restrictive. Please, A, change the setbacks other than schools, which is covered by SDCL 3420G55, from 1,000 to 300 feet, or B, change setbacks to 500 feet and allow a conditional use at 250 feet. Thank you for your time and consideration. I look forward to seeing you at the next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. So he's asking for schools to be possibly 300 feet or
No.
500 feet with conditional use?
Everything but schools.
Everything but schools, okay.
Yes, correct. The item numbers, the first item that he talks about is adding the language here, which would say owned by different entity or entities. I think that makes sense to correspond that with what, if we're gonna allow vertical integration here, it just clarifies it completely that that is allowed.
And my thought, Toby, looking at the, putting the four under one umbrella, I think, we look at the setbacks there to the retail, again, back to the retail, to the dispensary, standalone dispensary and manufacturing. Should they be separated? As far as setbacks, we have a 7-Eleven on every store. You can buy booze, cigarettes, anything you want, I just don't know that, and I've never seen the cultivation or the extraction facilities, I would say they're more industrial. A retail store is a retail store. It's a Quick Trip. It's a, so I don't know that, to me, that they fit completely all together. I think there's separate things that happen there that, I guess I'm just looking for input, because cultivation, how much can they cultivate with the retail store up front? I don't know that fits together, If there's someone that, company that just has a retail store and it's retail only, we don't have 1,000-foot setbacks on a retail store. And and like I said, if I knew more of the process, the cultivation, it sounds industrial, you're using chemicals to extract, it's an industrial use. That would be my question, and would be something for the pro people, I think that's what they're more looking for. I don't know if they fit all under one umbrella. The four uses in one building, I don't know that they should not be separated, my thoughts. At least the retail side, the retail side.
So, and I'm by no means an expert at any of this,
Right.
but, so the two parts to this is, one is, this isn't the only process that an applicant will have to go through.
Right.
They will need to secure a building permit. They will need to work with the local fire departments to obtain state fire marshal approval and things like that. So the building safety will be addressed. The second part to this is that in Lincoln County, in the unincorporated area, they will require a public hearing and approval by our elected Board of Commissioners. And so there will be some public comment. There will be some concerns, if there are any. Those will be addressed. I think that, and I, by means of no expert at this, but what I've heard testimony and what I've been to understand is that when we say the production or processing of it, there is a component that's, chemical oriented and those different types of things. But there's another component where they're just pressing the cannabis to I'm gonna use the right words, but extract the oil within. And that's pretty much a press operation, a minimal type, but I'll concur with you that it is more of an industrial use type of it. The other component of it that I recently became aware of is that there's a component of this where they would just maybe infuse the product maybe into cupcakes. Like a cupcake is, the boozy cupcakes or something like that. Well, there's a process where they would infuse cupcakes with this in some component. Well, under state law and under the definitions as is, that is a production processing type operation. But they do that currently in downtown Sioux Falls, if I'm getting that right, and some different facilities and things like that. So there's major components to this, but I just want to reassure the boards and the public that granted this is a permissive use from a zoning standpoint, there are other components that an applicant will have to, that we make every applicant go through as far as when they're occupying structures in the county. We do require building permits and those different types of requirements. But saying that, you know, this is our process that we want to hear from the board, what you would like to do with this. Your ultimate responsibility tonight is to make a recommendation of both of your bodies, what you would like to do with this ordinance.
And then Toby, if we change the wording to 6, must be located at least 1,000 feet from another medical cannabis establishment, and he wanted to add of another, what was that he wanted to add?
Owned by a different
Owned by
entity or
different-
entities.
okay.
Yeah.
So if we change that, if it's just specifically that in there, owned by a different entity, so is that,
That just clarifies that they can do the vertical integration.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's not gonna give them the in to say, oh, okay, well, I own this one, so I'm gonna have another one 500 feet from here, because I'm the same entity. It's not gonna give them that in, is it?
I think it just clarifies that what we're saying in 7 is they can do vertical integration. This just clarifies that it's, if it's the same entity, they can do it. Just, it clarifies it.
Okay,
So there's no conflict between those two sections.
okay.
All right, with that, I believe we're still on public input, so if there is no further input, I will close the floor to public input, and then we can ask for a motion so we can have further discussion. And after and during discussion, we can make adjustments, suggestions.
Or probably include that in the motion, if you would like to make adjustments to it.
What was that, Mr. Brown?
Include it in the motion if you'd like to make adjustments, which you can. You can make amendments to this.
Okay.
But I guess I'll jump in again, sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Yo,
but
please do.
I think the most important thing is that your board works with the Sioux Falls Planning Commission to come up with, you know, what a joint recommendation on this ordinance. You know, to hear from them how they're, because again, we've adopted something different, more similar to this. They're in the process of adopting something different than this, so.
So before we go to motion, maybe we should have a whole big group discussion. I'm trying to follow the deal, but this is a little bit different. I think this is a total group discussion, yeah.
I'd concur with that, Mr. Chair, so thank you for that opportunity. So I think perhaps it's best, commissioners at this time, if you have any thoughts prior to Lincoln County making a motion, we'd appreciate it at this time. So commissioners, any discussion, thoughts, comments, or questions on the ordinance?
Well, it's significantly different than the one that the city is moving forward with. So if the option to change this ordinance to the city ordinance, City of Sioux Falls ordinance exists, we could pursue that.
Well, I guess in my mind, this is relatively parallel to what Sioux Falls rules are, with the exception of the extra 2 uses that Sioux Falls decided they did not want to include, or we decided we did not want to include. So in my mind, the two are fairly parallel, except for the manufacturing and the, what was the other element? Cultivation. And so if Lincoln County decided that's something that makes sense to them as a whole, in my mind, this is kind of an in-between ground between what Lincoln County is trying to do by their own choices and what Sioux Falls has a comfort level with. So in a joint jurisdiction area, that makes some sense to me. And I'd be welcoming any other thoughts around that too.
You know, I do have a comment on that too, and I agree. I do think since Lincoln County is more rural, we have more opportunities for that cultivation and extraction, or if I'm saying it wrong, I apologize, rather than inside the city limits where it's more condensed. You know, we have more open areas where we can, Lincoln County does have more opportunities to do those 2 other items, in my mind.
If I could ask a question, Ian there, just how many, I wanna say, growing operations or cultivating operations, have retail right in their front door? From what I've seen, you know, in different states, I see a dispensary and they're half the size of this room, you know, so there's no growing on site. Just kind of curious if there is much retail in front of that operation.
You're right, generally there is not, but there are exceptions to the rule. Las Vegas is a tourist city, so they've allowed it because they like to let customers look through a glass window to see the cannabis plants when they're buying it. But there are cities around the country that have had similar zoning debates, and not as a result of our own desire to want to put retail at a wholesale operation, but because of zoning, we've been forced into that scenario in certain cities, like Boston, for example. My preference as someone who's managed both is I don't like my retail facility attached to my cultivation, but I would say we're running out of any options pretty much anywhere in the Sioux Falls region right now. So we're just looking at combining cultivation and manufacturing. Those are two licenses. We probably would not put retail at that same facility because they're very different. Hope that
And
helps.
that's just kind of what I've seen across the country for
think
the
you're
most
right.
part, so.
Mhm.
Further comments or questions, commissioners?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'd just like to kind of echo what Commissioner Irvin was saying earlier. The city, this isn't city of Sioux Falls jurisdiction we're talking about, but it's close. It's not totally just the county, but it's close. It's our joint boundary. And what I'm reading here seems to strike a balance between rules coming in from both elected entity bodies to this end. So I'm kind of seeing this make sense to me as well. One thing I would say, just to dot an I or cross a T, what was mentioned earlier about section 6 and 7 conflicting appropriate language to deconflict that, I would be in favor of as well. Sorry, I don't exactly have the verbiage to state for the record as I talk here, but I would be in favor of that as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Any further comments, commissioners? No city side comments at this time.
Thank you. I do have one more question. If this circle that was showing up on the overhead earlier, if that gets annexed in by the city of Sioux Falls, city of Harrisburg, whichever it is, do those rules then overtake what we put together here as the joint?
Well, it depends if they're already cited, they would be a non-conforming use when the city annexes them into their jurisdiction, which is typically what happens with all the properties in the jurisdiction, so they would be annexed in, would be continue to operate, they would just be a non-conforming use under the city's regulations.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner Poppins.
if you have an echo, I could put in an earpiece that might help. Are you okay?
You sound good.
All right. My comment at this point would be is, as a commissioner, we represent both municipality residents and rural residents. And the one thing that does disturb me is I relate this similar to the livestock industry. It's forced out into the rural areas because of the necessity having not to be conducive to be inside a municipality. I look at this somewhat similar to that, and I'm disappointed that there cannot be facilities inside of municipalities where they do have the fire protection on staff 24/7 to react to something like this. And we're looking at pushing this into rural areas. I'm not saying that I don't support this, but I do want to say that it does trouble me that we, again, are pushing something into the rural areas where the municipalities have chosen to just say no to it.
Thank you very much. All right, Commissioners, both sides, are we ready to take a motion? Any more discussion? I know we can discuss later, but, you know, it's good to get this all out here right now.
I think we're good on the city side.
All right. With that, I will ask the Lincoln County Commission to make a motion.
I'd make a motion to approve. DeRusso. As written, I think it sounds like the staff and our county commissioners have worked with the task force. They come up with a number that they're comfortable with. It is restrictive, which we don't want a free-for-all on it, so I would say they put their time in and understand what they got there, so I would make the motion to approve as written.
With,
Was
with
there
the,
a-
with the change
With
to-
the change that,
Yep.
yes,
Between
On
defining
6.
6 and 7.
yep.
Hi, Paul Bingford, City Attorney's Office. I just want to make sure that the commissioners understand if you make that change, I think that Commissioner Hogan asked a very good question. Would that allow the same owner to put 2 locations within 1,000 feet? And the answer is yes, if you make that change. I know that that was the proposal by Ned Horsted from the industry. But I want you to understand, if you make the change with the wording that it is, it would allow that. I'm not saying it would happen, but it would certainly allow the same owner to put 2 locations separately within 1,000 feet.
And that's what I was afraid of. They wanted a little loophole. So,
Within the ordinance, but not the licensing, correct?
I'm Bill Golden. I'm with the Lincoln County State's Attorney's Office. And if you read this in conjunction with the licensing ordinance, there is a provision in there that a entity may hold more than 1 license in Lincoln County, but it is up to the commission on whether or not they would grant more than 1 license. So there would be controls on this as far as, I agree with Paul that this would allow that to happen, but there's provisions in the licensings on whether or not you could have more than 1 license, the location, and that allows for a public hearing on those issues.
So with that change, they can have more than 1 business there, but it would be also up to the licensing to
Approve that.
say yes or no.
I'll jump in, or
Yeah, please.
we allow it as 7, we allow vertical integration. What the change is really, if you read it, there's a conflict in number 6 where it says any medical establishment. The argument could be is that we're not gonna allow vertical integration because they would own different units, or there's different establishments. It doesn't clarify that it has to be the same owner with it. That's all we're doing with that amendment, in my mind. But I'll defer to the legal counsel on that part of it. But I think there's a question, is there a conflict between 6 and 7? If we don't say that it's other, unless, or if you don't say owned by a different entity or entities. Yep.
I think it's good to let them discuss and we'll see what they come up with. Commissioner Poppins, just so you know, legal for the 2 city and the county are discussing what we're just talking about.
There's a joke in there. I won't say it over the phone.
They're out in the hall, Poppins.
Wait, text it.
Just for the record, Mr. Chairman, do we have a second on the motion yet?
We do not. On the original motion, we're still discussing what that will be, if there's language defining 6 and 7, or what that will be.
My comment while we're somewhat in recess would be is the difficulty of trying to manage two different rules in our county for licensing would be an extremely difficult task, I think.
Paul Bingford with the City Attorney's Office, and Bill Golden and I, with Lincoln County, discussed it. If what you are attempting to accomplish is to make this consistent with vertical integration, we think maybe better language at the end of the first sentence on 6 would be, it says, must be located at least 1,000 feet from another medical cannabis establishment, and then add, unless located on the same parcel of property and owned by the same entity. We think that that language would be more conducive to what, if that's what the intent of, the commissioners are, is to make sure that, that there aren't two different establishments within 500 feet or something along those lines. So anyway, that's just something that the two of us jointly believe would accomplish that.
And I think that's just different verbiage, but exactly what we're looking at
Thank you.
to happen.
Thank you, guys.
So with that, I'll keep my motion to approve with the verbiage come up by the city and our county attorneys.
And that was, unless,
The wording would be at the end of.
Establishment there.
The wording that we discussed is at the end of the first sentence on paragraph, or on section 6, where it says establishment, then to add unless located on the same parcel of property and owned by the same entity.
okay. Thank you. All right, we have a motion with the change to number 6. Do we have a second?
I'll second it to bring it to a vote, but that's it. I'll second it. Hogan?
All right, we have a motion and a second. With that, discussion, Lincoln County.
I'll be supporting this motion only, not to get it bogged down at this level.
Thank you. Other commissioners? On my end, I'll just say, you know, I really appreciate all the work everyone's put into this. I mean, I can't start thinking about the number of hours everyone's put into this, and from what I understand, everyone's been very professional and very, very working towards the same goal. So I do appreciate that. You know, I have to rely on the professional on this one. I don't see anything wrong with this, so I will support this too. Any other discussion? I'll ask for a vote. Roll call. You guys good? No more discussion? All right. Commissioner Hogan,
No.
Commissioner Druso,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
and Commissioner Jungling's a yes. City of Sioux Falls?
City Commissioners, the ordinance has passed on the county side. It's as stated in your packet with one exception, that exception being at the end of the first sentence in item 6, it's been added, unless located on the same parcel of property and owned by the same entity. Can I get a motion on the city side?
Move for approval, Irvin.
Second, Johnson.
The motion and a second. Commissioners, further discussion on the ordinance tonight?
Mr. Chair, I won't be supporting the motion. I believe it puts us in a position of inconsistency that's unwise public policy.
Thank you, Commissioner Paulson. Other commissioners?
As stated earlier, this is Irvin. I still think this is a good kind of blend between the varying rules between the city of Sioux Falls and the county, and it respects the Lincoln County Commissioner's intent. And I think that's important that we try to find those in-between agreements that make some sense. And in this case, I think this makes sense, and I'm in support.
Thank you, Commissioner Irvin. Other commissioners tonight?
Mr. Chair, I will echo Commissioner Irvin's comments again, and also just adding the change in language on item 6 removes that inconsistency or that conflict. So I too will be in favor of this.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Further discussion tonight, commissioners? Seeing none, we'll take a roll call vote at this time. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Norman?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Paulson?
No.
That item is passed 3-1 on the city side.
Thank you very much. With that, I see nothing else on the agenda, so we move for adjournment. You have a motion to adjourn?
So move to adjourn.
Second, Hogan.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Take roll call. Commissioner Hogan,
Yes.
Commissioner Druso,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
and Commissioner Jungling's a yes. City of Sioux Falls?
City Commissioners, the county has moved to adjourn. Do we have a motion on the city side?
Move to adjourn, Johnson.
Second, Norman.
The motion and a second. We'll take a roll call vote on adjournment. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Norman?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Paulson? We're adjourned on the city side. Thank you.